الواقع. كما أننا في نفس الإطار نحيي خطة السيد الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة والتي تعتمد بالخصوص بتحفيز أهداف التنمية الشاملة والمستدامة، وذلك كإطار عمل مرجعي للتكفل بالانشغالات المواطنين والتكفل أيضا ب17 هدف الذي حددته الجزائر في برنامج كان الأول في المرحلة الأولى 2015 2022 و 2022 2030. شكرا لكم سيادة الرئيس.
I thank the Minister of Health of Algeria, and now I give the floor to His Excellency Park Yin, Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, co-chairs, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We, the international community, are halfway through the 2030 timeline of meeting the SDGs. Sadly, there are warning signs that we are much more than halfway away from reaching the SDGs. Every week brings startling reminders that achieving sustainable development around the world is fraught with more difficulties than we had thought. The unspeakable devastation caused by the earthquake in Morocco and the flooding in Libya are the latest examples. The SDGs are literally on life support. It is beyond high time to translate our words into real actions. I would like to highlight 3 points that should be central to such efforts. First, we need to collectively invest more for each and every one of the 17 goals. The annual SDG funding gap has risen from $2.5 trillion before COVID to $4.2 trillion. Korea is aspiring to become a global pivotal state that contributes to freedom, peace, and prosperity around the world. As such, Korea is committed to shouldering greater roles and responsibilities. For example, Korea increased its development budget by 21.3% this year. We are aiming for an even greater increase for next year. In particular, our core contribution to the UN development system will experience an unprecedented upscale from current levels. This upward trajectory will continue throughout the Yoon Suk-yeol administration. Second, we must help enable the world's youth to unleash their potential and shape the future. Korea was able to rebuild from the ashes of the war because we invested in our youth. Although we were poor, primary and secondary education were free. This served as a key driving force for Korea's development. Korea will leverage its know-how on helping children have unlimited access to quality education. Third, tapping into the potential of digital technologies is critical, for it can accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. New technologies like AI should be harnessed to maximizing the freedom and welfare of humanity. Korea is fully committed to narrowing the digital divide through cooperation with diverse stakeholders, including the UN. Korea is fully ready to work hand in hand with its partners in the pursuit of our shared quest towards the 2030 agenda. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Korea. I now give the floor to Mr. Filippo Grandi, United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees.
Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting UNHCR, and much has been said already, so I'll just add a few points from our perspective. One, by the way, of an organization dealing with many people left behind. President Petro spoke earlier about millions on the move and saying, and I subscribe fully, that that's an indicator of how the SDGs are or not, are functioning or not functioning rather. Last week, I was in Chad, a country that is facing extraordinary development, climatic, and other challenges. Since April, its refugee population, already very large, was increased by more than 400,000 Sudanese refugees, part of a displacement which is up to 5 million people because of the conflict that is prevailing in that country. 400,000 refugees from Sudan into one of the poorest area of Chad, a country with few resources. A very eloquent example of how a new crisis can compound old ones and create a lethal mix that stunts development, blocks progress towards the SDGs, and leaves even more people behind. So to prevent this, which is the purpose of this discussion, we must improve responses. Too often, refugees, which are an indicator, if you wish, of this situation, receive humanitarian assistance, but the lack of further investments condemns them and their host communities to misery, setting back the development agenda. And we see this in so many places in the world. It's important to take stock of these failures. There's much talk about nexus between humanitarian and development. We won't achieve it unless we move development and the pursuit of the SDGs to a much needed faster track, at least in situations of crisis and post-conflict, unless we really embark on what we call now emergency development during the crisis itself. I was in Chad with the World Bank, and I want to commend the World Bank for taking there on the spot very significant investment in, or pledging investments in key areas of development. And we're working with them and other IFIs and development agencies and the private sector in mobilizing different resources in crisis to make responses sustainable. This is, of course, still small, focused on a number of situations, but if emergency development gets scaled up, and please hear a humanitarian telling you that, it can make a difference in so many ways. Thank you very much.
I thank the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees. I now give the floor to Ms. Victoria Taluk Koppers, Executive Director of the Indigenous Peoples International Center for Policy Research and Education.
Thank you very much for inviting me to speak in this dialogue. I also thank the states who have consistently supported the participation of major groups and indigenous peoples in the SDG processes. We regret that the newly adopted political declaration is not strong enough in terms of affirming the human rights-based approach in achieving the SDGs. Indigenous peoples and other major groups and stakeholders have reiterated time and again that the respect, protection, and fulfillment of human rights for all is a key foundation for achieving the SDGs. There is no doubt in our minds that the most effective ways of going beyond the pathetic 15% that has been achieved so far is through this. If we are to be sincere in our efforts to leave no one behind and undertaking transformative action, the human rights-based approach is key. Hunger and poverty in indigenous territories can be overcome if our rights to own, manage, and control our lands, territories, waters, and resources are protected. Indigenous peoples' territories are still being devastated, and we are displaced in the name of conservation and mega infrastructure projects. Evidences show that 50% of the world's biodiversity in tropical forests are found in our territories, and these forests are crucial for climate change mitigation and clean water. It is important that we persist our traditional knowledge and customary governance in managing our lands, waters, and territories. Additionally, our indigenous cultures, values, and spirituality, which compel us to live in harmony with nature, should be further enhanced and supported and transmitted to the young. I would like to present some recommendations that we have reiterated also in previous processes. First, we call on states to recognize the identities and rights of indigenous peoples as affirmed in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Many states in Asia and Africa still deny the identities of indigenous peoples. The human rights-based approach should be at the core of the implementation of the SDGs. Two, part of the human rights-based approach is to obtain the free, prior, informed consent of indigenous peoples when policies and developments are developed. We call on states to stop the criminalization and extrajudicial killings of indigenous leaders and activists and other environmental defenders. We support the call to reform the international financial system and also the trading system to ensure better equity. Finally, we call on states to consider indigenous peoples and other major groups in planning for the summit of the future. Thank you very much.
I thank the Executive Director of the Indigenous Peoples International Center for Policy Research and Education. I now give the floor to the last speaker of this dialogue, Mr. Martin Changong, Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, for giving me this opportunity to bring the parliamentary perspective to our discussions as we review progress or lack of progress in the implementation of the SDGs. And as the Secretary General of the Global Organization of Parliaments, an organization dedicated to the promotion of democracy worldwide in all its dimensions, including peace and sustainable development, let me argue that one of the key reasons why the SDGs are off track has to do with the deterioration of politics nationally and globally. It is not that politicians and decision makers don't know what to do, or that in a global economy of 100 trillion, resources are lacking. We need a new politics and ultimately a new contract between leaders and decision makers on the one hand and their people on the other. A new contract that expands the political horizon so that the decisions are made with clearly in focus. What is good for my people as a whole, regardless of distinctions of income, race, gender, geography, and so forth. We need political systems that are inherently less confrontational, more immune to undue pressure from private interests, and better equipped for dialogue and compromise between political actors, but also between groups in society at large. Building resilience and leaving no one behind, therefore, must start with deep institutional reforms to restore dialogue and bring people together at all levels, not just within governments, but across all of society. Given that parliaments are meant to mirror and represent all of society, they can and must offer such a framework that ensures no one is left behind. To this effect, my organization, the Inter-Parliamentary Union, is investing considerable financial and political capital in helping parliaments become more open, more transparent, more representative, particularly of women, youth, and other marginalized groups. We're strengthening parliaments, building their oversight capacities, the budgetary roles, in order for them to more effectively engage with the SDGs, with a focus on inclusivity and representation. Change is possible. We just need to muster political will. The IPU is committed to that mantra and to mobilizing parliaments and MPs across the world to scale up those efforts. Thank you very much.
I thank the Secretary General of the Inter-Parliamentary Union. We have heard the last speaker in Leaders Dialogue 2 on building resilience and leaving no one behind. On behalf of my co-moderator and myself, I wish to take this opportunity to thank all participants for their forward-looking and results-oriented interventions. We have just concluded Leaders Dialogue 2, and I thank the interpreters for having granted extra time to conclude this dialogue. The forum will continue this afternoon at 3 p.m. sharp in this chamber with Leaders Dialogue 3 on game changers, applying science, technology, innovation, and data for transformative action. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, Excellency.